What's up, everyone? Happy 4th of July. Welcome into Foxborough Rush. George Balekji, Adam Pellerin here. Wait, you stepped away from the grill?
I did. I took the opportunity to take a break because there were just too many requests, and I needed some time to get away and talk some football.
All our listeners, viewers, watchers, they showed up, brought their own burgers.
They did. Yeah, they listened to you last episode. You said, swing by, and they all found me.
Very influential voice. So with it being the 4th of July, we want to give our crew off. So this is a best of episode, special one we got for you guys. Bill O'Brien interview talking about Mike Vrabel and Boston College. Also, we have James White in this episode talking about his experience in the Patriots comeback in the Super Bowl. And Chris Hogan as well, sharing his stories from playing in a Josh McDaniels offense. All of that, special episode. Have a safe holiday. Careful with the fireworks. Enjoy the burgers from Adam.
Yes. Yeah, I'm still slinging them. After we leave, I'm back to the grill.
Extra cheese on mine, double-decker cheese.
Right, fair enough.
Please. Thank you, chef. So check out this best of episode right here. Now, I actually want to start with your time with the Texans, Coach, because you take over as a head coach. You bring in Romeo Crennel as your defensive coordinator, and then he brings Mike Vrabel as an assistant. What stood out to you as a guy that you were around when he was a player with the Patriots, now that you saw him in that coaching role where you're like, this guy has something to do as a linebackers coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, so we met each other right away. When I got hired at the Patriots, I was like lowest guy on the totem pole, and Mike was, obviously a player there, but he was the type of player that, he was like a captain and he knew everybody. It didn't matter who you were. You could be the third equipment guy. You could be the second video guy. You could be the quality control guy on offense. He's going to know who you are. And so we had a relationship there, and, ran the scout team and he would be on the scout team and things like that. It was a pretty cool relationship. And then when I got into coaching, I went to Penn State. He was at Ohio State. I tried to hire him there at Penn State, but he wasn't going to do that. But when I went to the Houston Texans, I hired him to be the linebacker coach, and he was great. I would say the things that stood out to me, obviously, that a lot of people have spoken about, is just a really intelligent guy, but had a way of communicating and connecting with people, right? He could really develop players because he really got to know them, and he understood the game, but he understood them off the field. He understood where they came from, whether it was, Jadeveon Clowney or Brian Cushing or Whitney Merciless. Like, he developed a lot of really good players at Houston when he was there, and it was great to have him on the staff.
And then once Romeo Crennel is done with the DC role, you promoted him. Was that a no-brainer for you? Where you're like, I've seen enough. I want you leading this defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a guy that even when he was a player at the Patriots, what always stood out to you about him and Teddy Bruschi and Rodney Harrison was their ability to see the whole picture, to be able to, communicate and understand what was going on, both with their package defensively, but also what was going on offensively. And he carried that into his coaching career. He did a great job, like I said, coaching the linebacker. So it was a natural progression for him to be the defensive coordinator. We weren't great that year. We had a lot of injuries. We had a lot going on in Houston that particular year, but he did a hell of a job as an assistant coach for me. And then obviously in 2018 he got the Tennessee job.
Coach, this feels like a big old family reunion because you know and love and have worked with Josh McDaniels as well. And obviously most Patriots fans feel comfortable with him as the offensive coordinator because we've seen this movie before. But I want to ask you, what can we expect with McDaniels and Drake May? Because this is a movie we have not seen before. What do you sort of anticipate, knowing what you know with Josh, seeing what you've seen with Drake May? How do you sort of see this marriage working out?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great marriage. I mean, if you look at Josh's career, obviously, his time with Tom Brady, everybody understands that, right? Several Super Bowls and all the great offensive numbers and things like that. But, he also coached other guys, right? He coached Jimmy G. He coached Jacoby Brissett. He had Matt Castle, when he was playing, so he was able to deal with all kinds of different quarterbacks and understand how to fit the system around what they could do best. And I think that's what you'll see with Drake. And Josh has spent a lot of time, I think, in his year off, away from football. He spent a lot of time studying the game and studying, college offenses and professional offenses, and he'll bring a creativity to the offense that I think will be awesome. I owe a lot to Josh. I learned a ton from Josh when I was there, and he's a great friend, and it'll be fun to watch his offense in New England.
Yeah, you mentioned it when you got to New England. You were the low guy in the totem pole, right? Well, you were an offensive assistant, and wide receivers and quarterbacks, and all under Josh McDaniels. We always hear how this system's complex, how it's demanding on the quarterback. What can you point out about this system, though? Sure, it's complex. Sure, it's difficult. But this is why so many quarterbacks are so successful in that system.
Yeah, I think it is difficult because it's a very difficult position to play. Like, it requires, a really good intellectual capacity to learn. It's a whole different language that you're learning. It requires obviously great talent, an ability to process information very quickly. But the reason why it's demanding on the quarterback is because basically the quarterback in this system is an offensive coordinator on the field. He's going to be able to, get the play call and be able to, get us into this play or do this, have choices of what to do. And I think that's what makes it so demanding to learn, because when you get out there on the field, we're going to give you the keys to the car. And I think that's what Josh, all of us, I think, do a great job teaching that. Josh will do a great job teaching that to Drake May, and he'll get the keys to the car here and be able to run the offense the way Josh wants it run.
I know on Saturdays you're coaching your guys, not watching them. You're coaching them. What you've been able to see of a Drake May, though, what have you seen that you go, okay, that's a guy, he's making those throws, but more importantly, he's making those reads, maybe the checks at the line of scrimmage, where you go, that's a guy that can grasp an NFL system and continue to get better in the IQ department, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I have seen him, not every game, but I've watched several games with him, basically on TV, my TV right here to the right. And the one thing that stands out right away about Drake is his personality. He's very calm. He takes the game as it comes to him. Like he's not really a jumpy guy, right? He's very calm as to how he approaches the game. He's very instinctive. You can tell he's a good communicator at the line of scrimmage with what they were doing last year. And I thought they did some good things last year, right? And then obviously he can get himself out of trouble because he's a really good runner. So I think he has the ability to approach the game the right way. He's not a nervous guy. He's a guy that allows the game to come to him, and then he does a good job of making adjustments. He can communicate with his teammates, and I think those are the qualities that'll be required of him in this new system.
Coach, whenever we have a football mind on the show, I try to learn something. And I want to ask you this, because the Patriots coaching staff is now set, and you've talked about Doug Marrone, you've talked about Todd Downing, you've talked about all these guys. But I do want to ask you, so I wanted Wes Welker as a wide receivers coach, and that was being floated out there. He could be a guy, and this is no knock on Wes, obviously, but they go Todd Downing. You spoke about how big of a hire that was specifically. That was a quote, big hire for the Patriots. Football mind, can you explain that to me? Because fanboy over here, I'm like, Wes Welker with the receivers is a no-brainer, but coaching football mind says no, Todd Downing is a great hire. Please break this down for me.
Yeah, look, Wes worked for me in Houston, and he did a great job. So he would have been a great hire too. He played, as you know, and he was a really detailed teacher when it came to teaching the position. The reason why I think Todd Downing is a good hire is because he's kind of done it all, right? He's coached different positions. He's run an offense. He knows what the big picture looks like. I know Todd. He's a detailed guy. He's a guy that'll fit in with Josh because he's got a great work ethic, and he'll be able to help Josh in the passing game and things like that. And so I think there's a lot that goes into that. I think Mike Vrabel is very familiar with Todd. He's worked with him in Tennessee. He knows what Todd is made of and how he teaches and things like that, and the detail that goes into how he teaches route running and things like that. So I think Todd's a great hire.
Conversely, how about Doug Marrone? I mean, you spoke about this as well. Great hire. It's obvious you like the staff here. Talk to me about the Doug Marrone hire as well.
Yeah, Doug and I go way back. We've known each other since 1995. We coached together at Georgia Tech for several years. We coached together at Alabama. We coached together here at Boston College. So we've known each other a long time. Our wives went to BC together, so they're roommates at BC. So we know each other really well. He's one of my best friends. I think he's a great coach. When I was a younger coach, I learned a lot from Doug. He was the O-line coach at Georgia Tech. I was the running back coach. He would spend a lot of time with me and teach me about protections in the run game and how to develop players and things like that. And I think over time you've seen Doug be able to do that at the New Orleans Saints. When he was at Alabama, his ability to develop players and really connect with players, similar to Mike, I think Doug will do a hell of a job as the offensive line coach in New England. He'll do a great job coaching those guys and developing them. That's the key with that offensive line. If you think back to all of the offensive linemen that have played over the years in New England, they've all been developed. There was a starting point, and then they were developed to a certain level, a high level, and that's what Doug's able to do too.
What exactly about Doug Marrone brings that element into it? Because if you look at this Patriots offensive line right now, everyone's thinking they got to get 5 new starters. Hey, if Cole Strange is something at center, or say it's David Andrews, Layden Robinson makes that leap at left guard, Mike Onwenu, we know what he is as right guard, Caden Wallace, year 2 out of Penn State, could be a right tackle, and we can see what happens at left, free agency, draft, what have you. What about Doug Marrone makes him so good at developing that talent and getting the most out of the guys that he already has around him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think he's a really good evaluator, so he's able to evaluate the player and say, okay, this guy can be a tackle to guard, or a guard to tackle, or a guard, and he can play some center. He's a center and he can play a little bit of guard. So he'll be able to evaluate the players and what they do best, and then with that evaluation, now he's able to understand how to teach this guy, how to drill the guy, what he needs to get better at, what he's really good at. And then offensive line is all about technique and detail, and then bringing them together and having them communicate very well together. That's the key. You got 5 guys that need to be on the same page when the ball is snapped. And so I think Doug does a good job of coaching all that, right? His ability to evaluate, his ability to put the guy in the right spot, to teach the guy, to drill the guy on the things that he needs to know to get better, and then his ability to coach the communication up front that it's going to take to execute Josh's offense. So I think that's why he'll do a good job.
Yeah, I love that. All 5 guys seeing as one. That's what you need. I'm sure you heard that a ton being around Dante Scarnecchia, the GOAT of assistant coaches. I got to talk wide receivers, though. How important in your eyes is it to have a true wide receiver one, a dominant pass catcher in this system, in this offense for Drake May, and for Josh McDaniels to help him out with his play calling? Yeah,
look, I have a strong belief in how Josh thinks about wide receivers. There is a number 1 wide receiver. If you think back to probably the greatest wide receiving core arguably in the history of the NFL was the 07 wide receiving core in New England, right? You had Randy Moss. Mm-hmm. He was the one. You had the other outside guy, Dante Stallworth. He was the speed guy. He could run go routes and do different things for Tom. And then you had the slot. That was the number 3 guy. That was Wes Welker. I think and then there was a 4, right? The 4 was usually a guy like Jabbar Gaffney back in the day that could do everything, right? He could play outside. He could play inside. And so I think Josh will construct it that way with Mike. And then those guys will go out and be able to execute the routes and be able to execute the passing game with Drake. But it'll take a while. I mean, they've got to teach that. They've got to put that in place, and it won't happen overnight. But I think they'll approach it the right way, and you'll see it get better over time.
Coach, I want to transition to BC now, and I told you I'm always trying to learn something. You are such a unique person to interview in this case of when you were at Penn State. No NIL, no transfer portal. It was traditional college football, right? And now at BC, the world has changed. There's NIL, there's transfer portal. I mean, recruiting's different. Talk to me about that transition, and then we'll talk about BC.
Yeah, I will say this. When I was at Penn State, if you think back to then, there was these terrible sanctions that came out. Right?
That's right.
So we actually did deal with the portal right away because those kids could actually leave and go anywhere they wanted. It was unique to Penn State at that time, but we had to recruit them back to the team, and we did lose some guys. So we are kind of, a lot of us here were with me at Penn State. We are kind of familiar with that, because we went through it 12 years ago. But there was no NIL. You're exactly right about that, right? So there's a lot of differences in college football now. I think the big key for us at Boston College is who we have to, be who we are, right? We're a smaller school. We're a really good academic school that plays good football in the ACC. We're in the greatest city in the world, in Boston. We're only 15 minutes from downtown Boston. We have a lot of great things to sell here, and our guys can also be compensated. We're a part of the NIL game in this new transition to this world of college football. And, I think our guys are understanding that, but they're also saying, you know what, hey, man, this place is going to develop me to be a good football player. It's going to help me academically to get this education, to be able to do that when football is over. And then we do a lot in the community. And I think that's the big thing about BC, where a man for others is the big theme of Boston College, and we try to live that every day.
Yeah, year one for you guys. Go 7-6. You have the big wins beginning of the season and a tough onslaught of an ACC schedule. Yeah. But when you got in year one and you looked at, now I'm back in college football in a way of a head coach, I'm at Boston College and I'm working in this new world. What was essential for you guys to have this success from day one, whether it's the players that you were able to inherit and the guys you're like, these guys are leaders, or for you with the staff you may have built around you? What made you so successful year one in Boston College as an entire program?
I think one of the things we tried to do right away when we got here is we have a lot of experience here, right? So we have 86 years of NFL experience on this staff. Mm-hmm. So we do have an understanding that the number one thing is the relationship with the players. So we tried to connect with the players right away, whether it was one-on-one or position meetings or unit meetings or team meetings, to try to explain to them who, this is what we believe in, but also to learn about them. A lot of interactive meetings so that they could understand what we were about, but we could also understand, hey, how did you end up here at BC? Where are you from? Tell me about your family, all those things that go into building chemistry. And I think we did a decent job of that. So we were able to implement our system. The guys believed in it. They bought into it. We talked before we got on air here about guys like Donovan Ezaraku and Ozzie Trapillo. They bought into it right away. So they led the team. And that helped us because we had some players, older players, that really bought into what we were talking about, and that helped us early on. We want to be better than we were, obviously, but I think we got it on the right track because we tried to connect with these guys right away.
Hey, you mentioned it. We were talking about it before. Donovan Ezaraku came on this show. We had Trayshawn Ward, Ozzie. Donovan, he leaves, and we go, all right, this is the official Donovan Ezaraku podcast.
We love him. Coach, we love him.
Hey,
we love him.
Tremendous.
I'm a NFL GM, and I call you, and I go, hey, I'm watching the film on Donovan. What else do I get with him? What is your pitch of this is why you got to pick this guy?
Having been in that league and been a head coach in that league, that's the type of guy you want in that locker room, right? He's already a pro, right? His approach to every day, he's very organized. He's very smart. He's able to understand the work ethic that it takes every single day. He shows up every day. He's not an up and down guy. He's the same guy every day. And he's a very, very bright guy. He's a great ambassador for BC football. And I think at the end of the day, anybody that has an opportunity to draft this guy, excuse me, at the defensive end position, he can rush the passer. He plays good against the run. He plays hard. He's smart. You can do different things with him. You'd want this guy in your locker room, no doubt about it.
Hey, well, Coach, just so you know, I have a petition going around for the Patriots to get this kid. I'm getting everyone to sign it that I can. Yeah. I don't even want him to leave town, Coach. I want him right here with the Patriots. I got to ask you this, man. You look at the ACC. Your boy Chapel Bill now with the Tar Heels. Look, we have all day. We'll have you on. I hope that you like George and I, and we get an invite to the Bill O'Brien podcast so we can talk football in terms of, when you guys face the Tar Heels. We got time for that. I just want to go back to the beginning. Were you shocked? Because I'm still in shock that Bill Belichick is coaching UNC. Are you shocked by that? And do you think at some point he's going to end back in the NFL passing Shula? Because I can't for the life of me think that this is where it ends for Bill Belichick and UNC.
I think for Bill, I haven't spoken to him about this, but Bill has a strong belief, like we all do, in our program and, how we develop players both on and off the field. And so, I don't think really he probably had that total opportunity to do that in the National Football League. So here he had a place in North Carolina. It's a good school, good facilities, good area of the country. And so he probably felt like, hey, man, I can really implement my system here and really have an impact on young guys' lives. Relative to the future, I have no idea. I wouldn't be able to go down that road. But, I think, look, he's a competitor and we're in the ACC together. But, obviously I owe a lot to Bill. I'm friends with Bill and, we'll see each other at the ACC meetings. And I think it's great for college football and it's great for the ACC that, we take a lot of grief. The ACC takes a lot of grief, but really, Bill just came into the ACC. So I think that says something about the ACC too. So I think it's great for the ACC. It's great for college football.
Yeah, I mean, ACC with 2 playoff teams. And when your schedule for 2025 came out, the way I look at it, Coach, is I'm like, all right, I can't wait to go to the Heights. And what teams am I going to watch take on BC in person in the Heights? Clemson, UConn, Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech. You have all of them at home. Those are 5 damn good teams, a national champion runner-up, 2 playoff teams. UConn is not the UConn of the old. That is a great team now. When you're a head coach and you got your home road splits and you see you got those 5 at home, what went through your mind? Like, man, can't wait for our fans to get behind us and take these guys on.
Yeah, I was very excited for Boston College. Those will be very difficult games. Like, we're not going to sit here and tell you anything different than that. Those are going to be games that we're going to have to be very prepared for. We're going to have to do a great job because they're so well coached. You're talking about great coaches and Dabo Sweeney and Jim Mora and Marcus Freeman, and you got guys coming in here that are renowned head coaches with really good teams with good players. But I think it's great for BC, right? I think it's great for Boston. I tell everybody it is a pro sports town. We know that. It's a city of champions. It's an incredible city. I grew up 20 minutes north of here. I love it. But we play on Saturdays. And so the Patriots play on Sunday. So how about come check out BC? Let's get 60,000 people in this stadium. When these teams come in, let's be loud, make it difficult on them. And then the next day, go watch the Patriots play the Jets down in Gillette. So I think it's important that we sell that to the city of Boston, to our fans, because we do have an awesome home schedule and our players are excited about it.
I like the way Will Campbell talks too, the way that interview he had to present the year, the way he described what happens, when an offensive lineman gives up a sack versus the edge rusher when he, gets a sack or whatever it may be. I like his mentality. So I definitely like the idea of him as well.
Yeah, what do you say? Like a pass rusher gets a sack a game is a top 15 pick. Offensive lineman gives up a sack a game. He's looking for work after his college time. That kid's mentality, man, that's great. I like it. GM James White, I like those evaluations, especially on Abdul Carter. Look, man, we can't bring you on without talking about Super Bowl 51. I mean, you were absolutely absurd that day. But what I wonder, every time I watch back, you scored 20 points, including the game-winning touchdown in overtime. You guys did not score your first touchdown until there were 2 minutes left in the third, and it was 28-9. When you broke through and finally got into the end zone, was there any juice? Was it relief? Were you like, all right, I mean, we still got all these points to make up? Like, what was the talk on the bench and just after that?
I mean, just really happy to score a touchdown in the game. All right, we actually got a touchdown on the board. Just keep scratching, clawing. Do whatever you can to try and make it close. I mean, there wasn't like a huge amount of juice on the sideline, but it definitely like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, like we can actually put the ball in the end zone. Let's see if we can keep it rolling. Defense get some stops, but I thought everybody just stayed dialed in no matter what the circumstances were. At times, Tom would be walking up and down the sideline, just like staying locked in. Like, let's keep it rolling, like that type of thing. Let's get it going. And then eventually we were able to break through, due in part to the defense, making enough stops. The Falcons helping us out by throwing the football. So, look, they helped us and we took advantage of it. So, I mean, I think it's one of the – I don't think we ever see probably anything like that, in our lifetime. So it's glad to be a part of it and be on the winning side.
James, I'll tell you, man, it was what was that? That was 2017, right? And I grew up a Patriots fan. My first job out of college, I was out in Missouri. We're all watching the Super Bowl at work, and it's 28-3, and I'm sitting there and I go, "What has led me to this point in my life?" I'm like, "What have I done? Like this, everything for nothing." And then you guys made it happen. Yeah. You said it. What Tom was saying up and down the sideline. I got to know, man. Like fourth quarter game tying drive. Overtime game-winning drive. What is he saying to you guys in the huddle before the drive even begins? Is he saying anything? Is he going, hey, one play at a time? Like, what is Tom Brady saying to get you guys to lock in and keep going to push that game to overtime and eventually win it?
I mean, from my recollection, from what I remember, it's nothing in the huddle. I mean, once you get in the huddle, you just dialed in. I think at that point, you felt how tired their defense was. We were rolling. And it's just like we got them, right where we want them. If we just go down there, execute, nothing it really had to be said, especially in overtime. We had so much confidence once we won the toss. It's just like, yeah, like just keep doing what we're doing. We'll end this game, on this first possession, and that's what we did. So, yeah, there wasn't any big motivational speech or any big moments where it's like somebody said something and we really got it going. I think everybody was just so laser focused, at that point. And like those guys that played a ton of snaps. I mean, obviously the offensive linemen played, close to 100 plays. Like Chris Hogan played like 90 something plays. You had Malcolm Mitchell making plays, like the most plays of the season. It was crazy. Not the most probably plays I played throughout the year as well. I was exhausted, so you just want you just wanted to continue doing what we were doing. All those the OTAs, training camp, running those hills, they were all for like those type of moments right there, and everything paid off.
Man, big ups to you. 3 Super Bowl rings. I mean, since you're the Lord of the Rings on the show, we got to know, who do you have in the Super Bowl this year? Give me the matchup. Give me the winner. Are the Chiefs three-peating? What we working with, James?
I actually was on somebody's podcast yesterday. We went through like the whole bracket and everything, and I ended up with I would have the Ravens versus Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, and I had the Ravens winning it. That was my. It was tough though.
Yeah,
going through the games, I had the Ravens and Chiefs rematching in the AFC Championship, and then I had the Lions and Philly in the NFC Championship.
Wow! All right, so you got Lamar beating Mahomes finally
in Arrowhead.
In Arrowhead.
He had to go into Buffalo and win 2 before that, so be a tough. Go ahead.
Do you text Kyle Van Noy after every sack and go, "How are you still playing?"
No, I haven't. I haven't shot him a text or anything, but I've definitely been watching, retweeting his posts when he posts like some of his highlights and stuff. But it's been amazing to see, and I know a lot of people get written off once they hit a certain age. And, they feel like your performance isn't going to be the same, but he's got better and better. And I said, hopefully he gets some money this offseason or whatever it may be. I hope he does get paid. It's just unfortunate because some people are just different. Some people still can get better and better with time, and you got to take every situation for what it is. I don't think you just group everybody into one category once you hit a certain age that your performance is going to start dipping.
Hey, hand up. I thought that when he was done with the Pats, he went to the Chargers. They let him go. I go, he was great. I just think he's at that age. What he's doing with the Ravens is unreal right now. James, I want to go back real quick when you said there was nothing said in the huddle. It's just everyone's locked in on the plays. Is that right there like an example A of culture where you guys, I am positive, you put 31 other teams in the situation you guys were in. They're thinking about what the score is. They're thinking about how they're going to lose a Super Bowl. They're just thinking about how this is impossible. But you guys, it seems like instead of making the world bigger than it has to be in the biggest game of your life, you made it smaller, like play-by-play. Is that example A of a culture?
Yeah, I think it's culture. I think it's leadership. And I think it's everybody trusting in one another. I think I go back to the AFC Championship last year between the Ravens and the Chiefs. When you look at the way the Ravens performed, they started playing a little left-handed. Guys were kind of going back and forth with one another on the sideline. You start seeing some of that frustration as time was starting to dwindle off when the game was still very winnable for the Baltimore Ravens, a game in which I thought they should have won. I just thought they started to get a little tight, in those moments. And for us, I feel like we didn't get tight. I think we just continued to believe in one another, trust the process and everything else. I think that standard had been set, like I said before, I even got there. I think everybody just trusted the preparation, that you put in, and you trusted one another. We had a lot of veteran players. I think probably Malcolm Mitchell was probably like the only rookie playing, within that offense. So we had guys that we had truly trust and belief in. And nothing really had to be said. You just go out there and execute.
You got a good story from your overall time being with the Pats, something about Tom Brady, maybe, what it was like, really getting to know Bill Belichick. You got a good story that you can share on the pod that you're up for sharing?
Any good stories? I always, my favorite, like Bill Belichick story, like involving myself is always my rookie season, during training camp, getting the handoff, during team drills, I don't know, break a nice little run. I come back. I go back to whatever the sideline or behind the huddle thinking I was done. But they told me to get back in for the next play, pretty exhausted because I ran pretty hard on that play. And I come back in the next play, get another handoff. I try and bounce it outside, and Brandon Brown just like knocks me off my feet, like my feet like go in the air. There's fans in the stand like, ooh, like, oh man. So I go finish the play, like go run past the safeties and everything, come back, and Bill comes to me, hey White, come here. Like, look, the bigger they are, the harder they hit. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like Bill, like he got a shot on me, but hey, I'm like most people that are gonna be tackling me is gonna be bigger than me, so I'm like I get all that. But yeah, he's a hilarious coach, man. As you guys see, you start to see some of his personality now throughout these podcasts and stuff.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He's been doing and being on Pat McAfee and everything. He's actually pretty personable. He's funny. He knows how to crack jokes and fun dude to be around. And then for Tom, I don't know if I have really any funny stories, about Tom, but I mean, I was just getting to share the locker room and feel with him, seeing the preparation that he puts in, the amount of time that he dedicates to the game, definitely, second to none. And, being a young player walking into that, you're like, man, this dude's whatever. By the time I got there, he must have been like, I don't know, like 13, 14, 15 years in. It's like he's still like preparing like he just started. And it's like, how can I not try and, put the work in to go out there and execute the way he does?
I got a question about Tom, actually. I love hearing that. What did he say to you when he got Super Bowl MVP in Atlanta, Super Bowl 51? What did he say to you? Like, I'm sorry?
Like he said, I thought like no James should have won everything. But hey, it's not his decision, So
right,
it's not his choice. It's a quarterback league. He performed extremely well in that game too. Close to like 500 yards passing or so.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime a quarterback does that, it's more than likely going to end up going to the quarterback.
James, last one from me. I have to get your reaction to Chapel Bill. When you heard the news, hey, even before you heard it was official, James, when you heard that he was flirting with UNC, what did you think? And then obviously once it became official, how do you think he'll do?
I didn't think it was real at first, and then seeing the breaking news that he was actually going there, definitely was a surprise to me. I definitely hope he does well. It's going to be a challenge. I'm currently helping out at Northern Illinois University, so I'm getting a firsthand look at what the new world of college football is like, and it's tough. I mean, one day you have a couple guys on your roster, next day you lose 10 guys on your roster, so it's different. I know he'll obviously make sure those kids are prepared for the next level, prepared week in and week out, and ready to go and dominate their opponents. They'll definitely have a coaching advantage every single week. I'm sure he'll still just have to get a little abreast on some of the college rules that are a little tad bit different. And I think the kids are going to want to play for him. I think it's just all about, this first season is going to be very important. How many games can they win? And can he retain, all the good players that he's able to bring in?
Man, I like you point that out. And that's awesome to hear you working at NIU. We always wonder, what's next? I know you're doing the Money Down pod. I saw you did a live episode in Madison at the Nitty Gritty. I think that was sick. What got you to want to work with NIU now? What are you doing there? Is it running backs coach, or are you just helping out around the program?
Just kind of helping out around the program. I know last year it was more of like a player development type of thing, and this year potentially looking to do a little bit more as far as player personnel, helping with NIL sponsorships, a little bit of an all-encompassing job. I don't think I necessarily want to be a coach. Most of the people there call me coach, but I don't consider myself, that as of right now. That's not the job title I'm looking for. But the head coach there, Thomas Hammock, he was my running back coach in Wisconsin for 3 years. So, I mean, he's been trying to have me, turn into a coach and everything for the last couple of years. But I'm not necessarily ready for that. But it's been fun. It's been fun, being around, the players. It brings me back to my college days. I remember sitting in similar type chairs to what they sit in. So, being a guy who they could watch film with, just have regular conversations with, in meeting rooms to make sure they stay grounded. It's been really cool.
He's Chris Hogan, 9-year NFL vet, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots, hopping on Foxborough Rush. Chris, I appreciate you taking the time. How are we doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, excited to talk with you. You know, as we see where the Patriots are at now, hired Mike Vrabel, filling out the coaching staff. The big one for everyone in New England was getting Josh McDaniels back as the offensive coordinator. But everything you hear about the system, Chris, is how complex it is, how demanding it is of the quarterbacks. I want to start with, what was it like when you landed in New England? You played for Josh McDaniels for 3 seasons. What was it like learning from him and just learning that system overall, working with him as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to start somewhere. You know, first things first is you kind of go in there understanding that this offense is going to be difficult to learn, or I guess it's going to be challenging, right? And you go in there with that notion, and that's what I went into Foxborough knowing that, okay, I'm going to have to study. I know what kind of detail is going to be asked of me. I know what's expected. You know, I have Tom, I have Josh, I have all these guys that have been in this offense. So for me, it was a very easy decision, right? Like, I went in and just dove headfirst into that playbook and learned as much as I possibly could. And I think, you know, it's just it's a different environment in Foxborough right now. Josh doesn't have Tom. He doesn't have Julian. He doesn't have Gronk. So he has got a bunch of new faces and going to be a second-year quarterback. So I don't think that, listen, Josh is not going to hold anyone's hand, and his expectations are going to be through the roof for this offense. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve to try to get all of these guys up to speed, and he's going to have to learn the best way that his quarterback is going to learn, right? How is he going to teach this? It's going to be much different than Tom. He's not just going to come in here and just expect Drake to be a Tom Brady. So he's going to have to learn that. He's going to have to learn how to communicate all this stuff to the wide receivers and the offensive line. So I think what Josh is very good at, he is one of the best teachers that I've ever been around. He's one of the best educators. He taught me more about football in 3 years than I learned from my entire time in the National Football League. And I think that if you're a young player on this team, especially those young receivers, especially Drake May, you should be really excited that Josh is coming in to teach you, and you're going to get to learn from someone who's been around the game, who's won championships, who's been around the best of the best, and has done it successfully for a number of years. So listen, when Josh got the job, I was pretty pumped for this offense and for this team.
I like that you point out the ways to learn. Like, he taught you a lot, but you also named your teammates. I want to start the teammates that helped you, grow. That's the issue right now, is that the most senior guy in the wide receiver room is like Pop Douglas, and this is a new system for him as well. Pop will be a year 3 guy. How important is that? And it is something on the to-do list for the Patriots. Get veteran receivers in there, and maybe we'll see someone say Jacoby Myers returns to the Patriots so he can help the guys. But how important is that to have more than Josh McDaniels, but the teammates that know the system around you to help everyone get up to speed and be able to apply it on the field and learn it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's important. It helped me tremendously having Julian and Danny and Gronk and Tom, guys that I could go to, guys that I could ask questions to. How'd you study this? How'd you learn this? What's the best way of running this route? So I had all of that at my exposure, right? It was there every single day for me. They don't have that in New England right now, but I don't think that hurts them necessarily. I think that can be a tool that Josh can use for this team and for this offense, specifically its skill players and its quarterback, to do this thing as a collective, right? To do this all together, to learn the offense together, to go through day 1 install to day 10 or whatever it is, however installs we get through training camp, and just do this as a team and as an offense and learn this together. You're all starting from square one, essentially, unless we bring in a guy like you said, Jacoby, who could absolutely help, teach the young guys in the receiver room and just the skill players, this offense. But I love the idea of Josh coming in. I think that it's an okay thing that we're all starting at square one, because they're all just going to have to take in all this information. Listen, it's like I said, Josh is not going to hold anyone's hand through this, and he's going to have high expectations. This is your job. Your job is to learn the offense, be able to go on the field and perform. And if you're not able to do that, then you're not going to be on the field. And Josh is certainly not going to put anyone on the field that doesn't know what they're doing. So my advice always, and I've said this in a number of other podcasts, is learn this offense as best as you possibly can. I mean, day one, whenever you get that playbook, just start diving into it. Learn the formations. That's going to help you the most. Learn the personnels. I mean, that's going to change week to week. And then, you'll learn the core plays that we're going to be going and we're going to run throughout the season. Because guess what? When week one hits, that playbook's going to change. So you got to know the formations, you got to know the personnels, and you got to just know the core, the play as a whole. There is no X, Z, F receivers, right? You got to know everything.
And how did you help learn that beyond, leaning on your teammates? Was it the practice reps on the field, or was it just a lot of studying? Or, I mean, obviously answer is a lot of both. What helped you the most to grasp his playbook when you first got there?
I didn't want to be the annoying guy that just, continuously asked questions. So I leaned on Chad. Chad O'Shea was my wide receiver coach. He was one of the best coaches that I've ever been around. He helped me tremendously kind of understand. I mean, we had morning sessions, we had afternoon sessions. I had sessions with him after practice, really to watch film of how things are, that Josh wants things done very specifically. So the specific routes, where you're lining up on plays, splits on the outside, these are all things that kind of those little details that Josh is very particular about that go into just the overall formation of a play. So, I did a lot of extra time with my position coach. And then, at the end of the day, man, it's kind of putting it upon yourself and kind of taking that accountability to teach this stuff yourself and to learn it and to study it and to if you're a no card guy, be a no card guy. If you're a guy that needs to go and, draw stuff on play, I was always a whiteboard guy with no cards, and I would quiz myself, what's the formation that I would write up on the whiteboard really fast. And that's like running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, I would try to know it all so that when it came down to game planning or it came down to a certain personnel or formation, I could be put in any of those positions.
Hey, as of we're having this conversation right now, the wide receivers coach is open for the Patriots offense. I know Chad O'Shea's in Cleveland. There's nothing that's saying that he could end up in New England, doing a great job there. But what made him such a good wide receivers coach helping you in the NFL?
I mean, other than Chad just genuinely caring about the person and the individual, and really he was just a personable coach that you can relate to on so many different levels. He was a family guy. He worked his ass off. And you could tell that, right? I mean, he was one of the first guys in, and listen, head coaches are working underneath Josh McDaniels. You might as well bring a cot with you as well when you roll into New England, because there are going to be some late hours, some late nights, and a lot's expected of you. And we knew that. I respected all of those coaches, but specifically Chad for the work that he put into it. But we would never go into a practice not knowing what to do. If that was extra walkthroughs, if that was extra meeting time, extra film time, he went above and beyond for his guys in his room to make sure that we were so well prepared, even for practice. And then by the time we got to the game, it was just easy for us.
It is. Like, everyone, I feel like, rolls their eyes when they hear the Patriots had all the answers to the test before they got to the test. But that's what it sounds like. Chad O'Shea, it prepared you guys, in particular, the wide receivers, to have all the answers in practice and all the answers on game day. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we wouldn't just watch film to watch film, right? We did it for a reason. We'd watch specific guys. We'd watch specific coverages. We broke down film, game film from the last year, 2-3 years previous, or if a specific coach was coaching on another team and this is what he did in third down. I mean, we went over everything, man, and that's what I said. I don't know what this coaching staff was like underneath Gerard, but underneath Vrabel and underneath Josh, I know that they're going to be extremely prepared for any and all situations. And I really think that level of preparedness is going to help us kind of win some of those one-score games that we've kind of found ourselves in the last couple of years. We really haven't been able to close the door or kind of come up clutch in those situations. So I really think that these two guys are going to kind of push us over that threshold and help us win football games in the fourth quarter.
And to get past like the learning curve and getting acclimated, we hear again about the system. It puts a lot on the quarterback at the line of scrimmage. You always hear the option routes for the wide receivers. What exactly does it demand of you guys in that position when it comes to being on the field and from play to play, drive to drive, game to game?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to establish a relationship with your quarterback. I mean, I think that those guys have been doing that. This is going to be a totally new system, a whole new offense that they're going to be learning. Drake's learning it too. So when you're out on the field, the communication between the quarterback and the receiver has just got to be continuous, and you just cannot go into a play call without really understanding what your quarterback's expecting you, where he's expecting you on the field, if you're reading the same coverages. So that comes down to, those option routes are huge, right? If Drake's reading one coverage and the receiver's reading another coverage, that timing and where he's expecting you to be is going to be off. So I think there's going to be a lot of work that's done off of the field, or let's just say maybe post-practice, working on different looks, different routes, understanding the timing of these things. And I think Drake and Josh will do a great job with Drake. And I think, hopefully there is, I would love to see David Andrews kind of, be a leader in that offensive line room. I'm not exactly sure if where he's at contractually, but he would be a guy that you would lean on heavy because he knows he's been there, he's done it for a number of years, and he could help Drake tremendously.
Yeah, I love you point out the chemistry and like what the processing takes for the quarterback to know. I was very, very impressed with Drake May because I thought the talent's there. Maybe the processing and reading defenses would take a year, but like from start one to his final start of the season, he showed that growth. What have you seen from watching Drake May this season where you as a wide receiver, you go like, man, I would love to play with that guy?
Yeah, man. Listen, he's an athletic quarterback. He's able to extend plays. We saw that kind of time in and time out, week by week. He seemed to get better. To me, he was a young quarterback that really knew when the play was over. He wasn't afraid to check down. He wasn't afraid to just throw the ball away. He needs to learn how to slide a little bit better here and there, but he can use his legs very effectively. So outside of the pocket, he's got a great arm. He sees the field. He's not afraid to throw over the middle of the field. So listen, all those intangibles are there, and I was really impressed with him this season and how he progressed from his first start to his last start. Saw a lot of really, really good things from him. And if I'm Josh McDaniels, I would be pretty excited that I get to work with this young man.
What was it like for you as your career progressed? Like you played with like a Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo, I think a Kyle Orton, obviously Tom Brady. And you were there in 2017 when it was Brady, Brissett, and Jimmy G all in one season. What's the difference like of just in general playing with a younger, less experienced quarterback and then the veterans of the league?
Yeah, man, I think it just goes to that communication, right? Mm-hmm. You can't with Tom. You always kind of knew what he expected, and he was very vocal about what he wanted, how he wanted routes run, what he wanted a formation or a play to look like. With the younger quarterback, maybe you don't get as much communication, or they're maybe a little hesitant to speak up in a meeting or speak up on the field. So I think that for a young group of receivers and a young quarterback, I think you just got to communicate, man. It's just that constant flow of communication back and forth, just really talking through everything. I don't care if it's a 5-step hitch route or a juke route, whatever, how technical the route can be. As long as you're on the same page with your quarterback, you're going to be in a much better position. When you get down to this, you get into plays and the quarterback looks out and he sees a guy and he's just like, I have no idea what he's going to do. That's an unsettling feeling. And Tom would always tell us, man, this was one thing that will always take and I'll never forget. It's like, listen, if I don't think you know where you're going or I don't trust you, right? That's the big word that we can highlight here. If I don't trust you, I'm not looking you're not getting the football. So there's always that trust. And I think for Drake, with all these young guys, and, listen, we can talk about Baker and Polk and, how, the seasons went for them. And listen, they're rookie players. They got a lot to learn. I think for them, this is a great fresh start. I think they should be excited about this. And I think that they really need to go to that. I was hearing so much about how Drake and Polk and Baker, they were always seen together. They were always talking. Like that can't stop. And you should be excited that Josh is going to be in here, and you should learn as much as you possibly can so that when you do get into a game, you get into practice, you get into training camp, your quarterback trusts you. and then you're going to get the football. You're going to be able to make plays.
Hey, the year before you got to New England, your last year in Buffalo, that's when you started to break out as a receiver. Then you come into New England, and that's when you really took that step forward, playing like 80, 85, 90% of the offensive snaps every game, every season. What was essential for you to build that trust with Tom Brady? Just like that square one, and then obviously it led to the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts, there's so many different parts of gaining Tom Brady's trust. You can't just come into a locker room and he just trusts you, right away. So for me, it was, I wasn't overly communicative. I wasn't a guy that asked him a ton of questions because listen, I had Julian, I had Danny, I had Gronk. I had guys that he had already established trust with. I know that he's going to be talking to them. So really what I did was I just kind of did what I did my whole career. I put my head down. I worked hard. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. I was, the details for me were huge. I paid attention to every single little detail and tried to do them to, best as I possibly could so that, I showed up on film. Is Chris doing the right thing? Is Chris where he needs to be? Is he lining up fast? Does he look like he knows what he's doing? Is he able to read the coverage and kind of diagnose whether or not he needs to, take the middle of the field or sit it down and know all of that kind of stuff? So, I had great guys to learn from and to model, my game after and learn this offense. But it also, you got to put some accountability on yourself and being able to learn it and do it and gain the trust of your quarterback. And when the ball came my way, I made plays, right? That was another thing is when you get opportunities in this league. And for me, I took advantage of every single opportunity that I possibly could have and anything that was thrown my way. And I just made the most of it. And so little by little, you kind of gain that trust of your quarterback. And, he's looking at you more, on Sundays than maybe he would if he really didn't have that trust in you as a receiver.
Shout out Travis Thomas also in the interview with Bill O'Brien and James White. Before you go, Adam, real quick, What is the plate for you on 4th of July?
Well, you got to go traditional, hamburgers, hot dogs, chips. I mean, whatever. People bring all sorts of different side dishes and salads and things like that. So I'll pile a little bit on.
Yeah.
So that's really sort of miscellaneous, but I would say the staples are burgers and dogs. You?
Keep the main thing. Cheeseburgers, hot dogs, little salad on the side, just some greenery. But it's more burgers are better for me.
Bun toasted or no?
Yes, of course.
Really?
Extra cheese.
Some people don't like that. And some people don't like the cheese either.
I'm crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm all for it. I'm simple. I would just tell you everything. Put everything on it.
Everything on it, baby. Yeah.
Thank you guys for making us part of your day. Have a great rest of your holiday. We'll see you guys with a brand new episode on Monday of Foxborough Rush.